Hello YouTubers, this is me Karishma and welcome back to my YouTube channel Master That English, where we understand, analyze and interpret the important texts that may be a part of your English curriculum. Our topic for today is something that is very interesting in terms of the 18th century literary genre. And this is in specifically to the laughter, to the humor that we all cherish and enjoy. So let's give it up to it. Get on with your pens and notepads because we are going to start something interesting that is really going to tickle your mind because we are going to mock some literary people. We are going to mock some individuals who are the targets of this well-known literary writer of the 18th century, Alexander Pope. So stay tuned. Here we go. Before we delve into the details about what are the contents in this work, it is important to know about the manner in which this work was published. This work went through 3 different variations in terms of its publications. So there were 3 different versions. The first version was divided into 3 books, and the publication was in the year 1728, followed by the next publication that happened in the very consecutive year, which was 1729. That was called Dunciad Variorum. The last publication was called the New Dunciad. This work was now divided into 4 books. What's interesting is this is the most controversial book because there are a lot of other details that Pope has described in context to the contemporaries of his time. Who are these people? We will talk about these aspects as we keep moving ahead. But before I tell you these details, it's very important to understand the genre in which this work is written, which is a mock epic. What is the difference between a mock epic and an epic? To understand that, let's delve into the first characteristics of what an epic really comprises of. An epic was a long narrative poem which usually spoke about the tales of some legendary stories which comprised the heroes. These heroes were legendary heroes because they fought wars, they were warriors, they were kings, and most importantly, these stories always started from the middle, which is the reason why it was often described as in medias res. That means a story or a tale which is starting from the middle because we are going to go to the long details. So in order to give that intrigue, that interest in the story, usually the stories were represented from the middle of the tale. The next thing that was important is that not only were there mortals inside these stories, but there were also gods. Mostly in Greek stories, the gods were represented in the form of these Greek gods, and the most significant gods among them was Zeus, who was known as the leader of all the people, the demigods that were present, and these gods had the power to control the events that were taking place. Many of the gods that were present in these stories had their favorite mortals. These gods would do anything to save their favorites. As a result of which, there was another technique that was usually employed in an epic, which was called Deo Act Machina. This is actually a technique in which the gods suddenly intervene in the activities of the mortals and try to save their individuals from the troubles or the climax that the individuals are facing. It could be a situation in which the hero is almost going to die, but the god intervenes and tries to save his favorite because that is what the god wants for his favorite. This is the technique that was employed in the epic. Now, when we talk about a mock epic, the technique is somewhat the same, but there is a little difference in the references that are provided in the mock epic because this mock epic is also a very long narrative poem. But the purpose in a mock epic is not to glorify an event, but the main objective in a mock epic is to ridicule the individual at a grand level. I'm going to ridicule you, I'm going to mock you, but I'm going to do it in a very grand scale. This is what Pope wanted to do. Now the next question that should arrive in your mind about mock epic should be that why was Pope using mock epic? He was ridiculing contemporaries, but why was he ridiculing these contemporaries? This is so significant in this particular work. It is because these individuals The individuals that he is ridiculing were constantly critiquing his work and his creative talent. Pope comes from an age in which the style, the trend, the poetic diction was all very, very disciplined. And Pope, in a way, popularized a very well known technique of the time, which was called heroic couplet, which is using just 2 lines to describe a very significant thought or whatever poetic thought you want to describe in a particular work. Pope was able to do it with beautifully in the manner in which he wrote. He wrote a lot of translations, he did a lot of editing. He edited a work of Shakespeare. The new version of Shakespeare's were edited by Pope. He even translated a lot of Greek texts, such as the Homer's Iliad is one of the significant works that he has translated. These works were very, very severely critiqued by his contemporaries. It could be because they were jealous, and as a result of which Pope wanted to get back with them. But the only way in which he felt, the most dignified way in which he could reply back to these individuals, was through his poetic genius. That is what he has represented in his work Dunciad. So in this work, what you get to see is that the setting is like an epic, but the characters are very, very different, are quite opposite in their characteristic traits, because the goddess that is used over here in Dunciad is not a goddess who has the power to do something very good for the mankind. In fact, she is described as the goddess of dullness. She is not doing anything progressive for the society. She is only creating a kind of gloom, a kind of unproductive environment around the surrounding. The next thing are the kings and the queens that are represented. Here we are mainly dealing with the kings, which are 2 individuals who are mainly mocked, that is Lewis Theobald and Colley Cibber. In the first editions, it was mainly Lewis Theobald who was ridiculed mostly, and the other person in the later edition, which is the last edition, the person who was ridiculed, who was the representation of a king, was Colley Cibber. These individuals are also comprising of unproductive creative thoughts. So they are not being able to do anything for their province, because this is a province of idiots again. And there is nothing that these individuals can do to improve the society in a progressive way, so that individuals are able to do something productive for themselves. Not only the kings, but even the warriors that are represented, the contestants or the individuals who are participating in the events that are taking place, are also performing nonsensical actions. They are not doing anything for improving the conditions. Warriors fight so that the country can get honor, but these individuals are not providing any honor to their province. They are doing what the country is known for, which is creating only stupid actions and trying to prove a point through their actions. This is what we actually get to see in the difference of a mock epic, and Pope has actually tried to describe these perspectives in his Dunciad. Now, Dunciad is a very big poem, as I told you, that it is a work which is comprised in 4 books. As a result of which, due to time boundation, today I am just going to focus on 2 stanzas that have been taken from the book 2. And these lines are mainly dedicated to the editor of her time, the literary editor of this 18th century, who was well known for writing literary magazines. The most popular work that he wrote was called The Spectator. This is none other than Joseph Addison. And the lines described are called Lines on Addison. We'll be studying these lines, the 2 stanzas in which Pope is describing his contemporaries. There are few people that he's ridiculing, and there are few people whom he's honoring. Who are these people, and for what context is he ridiculing his contemporaries, are the questions that should be there in your mind ready. It's because these are the hot questions that we are actually going to deal in this particular work. So let's begin. Now, question number 1. The next question that should come in your mind is, what is this book 2 all about? This book 2 is mainly again comprising of a setting, because I told you it's a book. So in every book there is something that is having some particular situation is taking place. In the book too, what is happening is that there is a grand tournament. A tournament is like a competition. This was something like a very well-known tradition in the Greek culture, where there would be a lot of heroes who would try to show their power or their superiority over the other contemporary warriors by just fighting and showing their talent. And this is what you're getting to see over here. So the queen, that is the goddess dullness, has started off this, she has inaugurated a procession of tournaments which are taking place in her province of dullness. And you would get to see these contestants. These contestants are obviously representing the literary field in this particular work, and they are not representing a superior work in their productive output that they are producing, because the work that these individuals produce is of inferior quality, and that is what you get to see in their produce also. Who are these individuals and what kind of inferiority are they bringing in the literary production is something that we need to understand in the coming lines that we are going to study. So now is the time to start on with these two stanzas. Before I begin, it is very important to read these lines first so that we get a very clear idea of what this poem is mainly addressing to. You've got the hint, so now let's focus on the lines and then interpret line by line so that we get a deeper insight of this magnificent work, which is a mock epic of Alexander Pope. So now pay clear attention to the lines. Lines on Addison from the Dunciad. Heaven rings with laughter of laughter vain. Dullness good queen repeats the jest again. 3 wicked imps on her own Grub Street choir. She deck like Congreve, Addison and Prior. Mears, Warner and Wilkins run, delusive thought. Breval, Bond and Bezaleel, the varlet's caught. Curl stretches after Gay, but Gay is gone. He gasps an empty Joseph for a John. So Proteus, haunted in a nobler shape, became when seized a puppy or an ape. To him the goddess son thy grief lay down, and turned this whole illusion on the town, as a sage dame experienced in her trade, by names of toast, retails each battered jade. Whence hapless Monsieur much complains at Paris of wrongs from duchesses and Lady Marys. Be thine, my stationer, this magic gift. Cooke shall be prior, and Concanen swift. So shall each hostile name become our own, and we to boast our Garth and Addison. Okay, that was pretty. Very interesting lines. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to understand these lines as well. So let's understand 2 lines at a time. Let's begin. Heaven rings with laughter of laughter vain. Dullness good queen repeats the jest again. Now notice, listener, the first thing mentioned here is about heaven ringing. Heaven here represents the place which was the place or homage of the gods. That is where the gods resided. And in this place, where this is the universal control unit of the epic, from where all the activities are being controlled of the mortals, what is happening in this heaven? The first thing that is happening is that there is a sound, there is an alarm that is being generated. And the alarm that is generated is of laughter. Pope has been very smart enough to tell you the kind of laughter. Laughter are of various types, and this laughter has been described in the very next line that proceeds after this, is that heaven rings with laughter of laughter vain. The reason why it's been described vain is because this is a laughter which has no purpose. You do not know the reason why it is. It's not something which is productive, which is the reason why it's been called vain. There is no purpose when it is completely empty. They do not know the reason why they're making some fun, frolic, joy, whatever they're doing. They do not know the reason, which is the absurdity of this place. They do not even know the reason for which they're enjoying. And the very next line shows the person who is causing this kind of noise is mainly the main control individual, the goddess, which is who has been described here as the queen of dullness. She is the one who wants to repeat this empty enjoyment that is being taking place in this province where the heaven is lying, and in this heaven, the heaven also where the goddess is lying, she basically wants that the activities should repeat again. This empty attempt of enjoyment should keep on taking place because, again, she is the goddess of dullness. That means she doesn't want that the individuals in her particular province, that empire which she is controlling, she doesn't want that individuals in that province should do something productive. She doesn't want them to be creative, which is why she's called the goddess of dullness. She wants everybody to be dull. She wants everybody to enjoy for things that serve no purpose to the society, which is what she's doing. And she is using her supernatural powers to repeat that fruitless activity all over again. This is what is represented in the first two lines: the noise being generated in heaven and the purposeless activity being repeated by the supernatural powers of the Queen of Dullness. The other important thing mentioned in the first two lines is the person who is being addressed. Who is this dullness queen? Now, every character that is mentioned in this poem is indirectly addressing to a particular person. It is believed that the dullness, the Queen of Dullness, is none other than the Princess of Wales, Caroline of Ansbach, who was the wife of George II, and she had at one point of time supported Alexander Pope a lot for the work that he was producing. But later on, when George II and Mrs. Caroline in a way gained popularity, they became rulers, they were not having time to give patronage to the upcoming artists or writers who were doing well or writing creative works, which is something that Pope felt was very, very demeaning, which is the reason why, because a patronage is supposed to improve, in a way, popularize art, and by not popularizing art, you are actually making individuals dull. So the dullness queen here is, it is assumed that it is the Princess Caroline of Ansbach, who was the wife of George II. She is the one who is generating the activity of dullness all over again. Now, let's move on to the next two lines. What is this dullness queen doing? She is repeating an activity. What are these activities that are being repeated? Have been mentioned in the next two lines, which states, 3 wicked imps of her own Grub Street choir, she decked like Congreve, Addison, and Prior. Now, notice that the first line in this third line is mentioned as 3 wicked imps. Who are the imps? Imps are none other than an allusion to the characters from folk tale, who were usually fairies that were very, very small in stature, but they would also perform activities just like fairies would do. But there is a slight difference between a fairy and that of an imp, is that fairies usually do good deeds for the humanity, whereas imps are somewhere mischievous. They are troublemakers and they cause trouble wherever they move around. And that is what these small little imps are going to do. They are going to throw some sort of mischief in the empire. And who has decked up these imps? None other than the Princess of Dullness. She has picked them up and she has dressed them up in a particular fashion, almost like an imposter of some other characters. Who are these characters? Pope has been very direct about these characters, whom these imps are in a way trying to imitate, which is Congreve, Addison, and Prior. These are the individuals whom Pope has in a way praised in his work. Pope believes that it is only the creative writers, it's only the writers who have been able to provide a productive work are the ones who should be motivated, promoted. And these 3 characters, which is William Congreve, who was a well-known comic dramatist of the 18th century. Addison, who was he is known to have written the famous literary magazine called The Spectator. And Mathew Prior, who was also a well-known poet of the time, are the individuals who were considered to be the stalwarts. And what is the dullness queen really doing? She's trying to dress up these imps like these stalwarts, almost like she's making imposters who are going to act like these individuals, although they are not really the true representation of good literary writers, because they are doing only mischief. They are only creating trouble for the society. They are not producing something which is good and which is productive. And these characters are, in a way, dressing up. So they are the imposters. Besides this, now what is happening in this, when they are dressing up as these individuals, there is a kind of commotion that is going to be created. People are going to feel afraid maybe of the fact that they are seeing somebody who is a stalwart, because they are trying to they are imposters who are trying to look like somebody. So is this first impression of theirs, is this creating some kind of stir? What mischief are they trying to create by dressing up like somebody else? This is what we get to see in the next two lines. So let's read these lines and interpret them again. Now he says, these dressed up imps who are looking like Congreve, Addison and Pryor, Mears, Warner, Wilkins run, derusive thought. Breval born Bezaleel, the varlet Scot. Who are Mears, Warners and Wilkins? These are, in a way, pirated publishers of the time. They are known to be people who were publishing works of anonymous writers, and they are belonging to none other than the Grub Street Choir. Who are these individuals of the Grub Street Choir? Grub Street is considered to be a particular locality in London in the 18th century where there were writers of inferior productive writers who were coming from an inferior background, because the works that they were producing was not something that was considered to be very, very productive. That was not considered to be something very inspirational, because mostly whatever they were writing, they were struggling artists. So they were not writing for the welfare of the society. They were mainly writing for their own survival needs first. So they could produce anything and everything, and sometimes they even tried to look like other individuals. They would even try to steal the style of some other artists just to earn their basic, just to cater to their basic survival needs. And that is what the individuals of the Grub Street Choir were doing. These are bunch of people who are having different wavelengths. So first we are talking about Mears, Warners and Wilkins who are running. These are publishers who are running with delusive thought. Why are they running like the delusive thought? Because they are afraid that these known individuals, that is the imps who are behaving like these known writers like Addison, Congreve and Pryor, would in a way be able to, these well-known writers are in a way creating a kind of fear. They're generating fear in these publishers. What is Pope really trying to say is that this is a very weird combination. This is the reason why good publishers and bad writers cannot go along together. And what we see here is that these Mears, Warners and Wilkins are technically bad publishers who are not producing something very, very productive, which is the reason why they are afraid of stalwarts. They do not want to stand in front of stalwarts. Why? Because they're afraid that they may be mocked, and which is the reason why they are running away. And Pope is describing this combination of good writers with pseudo publishers as a delusive thought, as something which is unbelievable. He calls this blend as something that is not possible. This is not possible in the reality that bad individuals are combining with good writers. And these publishers, these writers who are publishing anonymous works, who are just trying to publish work for their own selfish profit, are technically people that can never be thought of associating with these known stalwart writers, which is why Pope is describing this combination of the good writers with these pseudo or these pirated publishers as a delusive thought. Besides the publishers, there are also three more members mentioned in the very next line who have been described as servants, people of again who are experiencing inferiority complex. These are writers who have been producing literary produce in a way to gain attention. And the manner in which these three writers, Breval, Bond, and Bezaleel, are gaining attention is by ridiculing the pioneer writers in a way just to gain attention and fame. For instance, Breval is one of the writers who was mercilessly ridiculed Alexander Pope in one of his work, where obviously then the mocking over here in his work was mainly done so that he can gain attention. Similarly, Bond and Bezaleel are also writers who were targeting Alexander Pope the most and in a way wanting to show that Alexander Pope is an inferior poet and the literary produce that they are producing or whatever they are writing is something which is of superior quality. So that's the reason why they are also in a way feeling a sense of inferiority complex. They are like the servants who are experiencing a sense of inferiority complex when they are in front of these imposters, that is, these stalwart writers. That is what Pope is trying to describe over here. Whether it is the publishers who are producing anonymous works or whether it is the writers who are experiencing inferiority complex of being caught for whatever wrong that they are doing, all these individuals are feeling a sense of inferiority complex. They are feeling embarrassed that somehow these well-known writers may in a way ridicule them or mock them for whatever inferior production that they are producing, which is the reason why the publishers are running, and even these writers who are writing stupid works are also feeling a sense of being caught by other individuals for the wrong works that they have written in a way in which they are trying to ridicule these stalwart writers. They are afraid that they will be caught and they will be in a way being scolded by these pioneer writers who are actually the imps who have disguised themselves as the well-known writers. So that describes these lines. Now let's head on to the other individual. There is another individual that is mentioned after these publishers and writers, which is Curl. Who is Curl? Curl stretches after Gay, but Gay is gone. He gasps an empty Joseph for a John. The Curl person that is mentioned here is again a well-known publisher of the time. His name is Edmund Curl. He was again a bookseller who is known to be a very, very mischievous bookseller again, because what he did was his only interest was to mint money. And so he published books in whatever way he can, whichever way he can, and the only reason why he did this was mainly to gain popularity as a publisher, to gain a lot of fame and from the society around. And his known talent, or the manner in which he was gaining a lot of popularity, was he was known to publish works within very little limited period of time. So he could talk about any person or any individual, or he could write about any event in a very limited period of time, which is the reason why it is mentioned here. Curl stretches after Gay, but Gay is gone. He gasps an empty Joseph for a John. Now, this publisher, this person, the other person mentioned here is Gay. Now, Gay here is actually a well-known poet of the time who actually died a very sudden death. And because of this, there were many people who wanted to know about this writer Gay. So what did this person, Edmund Curl, do? It is believed that he was so greedy to get fame and recognition as a publisher that he was trying to, in a way, get on with the details. He was stretching. So why was he stretching after Gay? He was stretching so that he could grab some information about Gay, who was already dead. So what do these individuals do? These individuals or these publishers, money-minting publishers, they have no regard for the individual who is dead. They want to make profit even out of people who are no more there in this world, and they want to gain a lot of benefit, or in a way they want to get a lot of profit out of these individuals, which is the reason why he's stretching after a dead man so that he can gain a little profit out of him. This is the reason why he's stretching after Gay, but the Gay is gone. That is what Pope is trying to describe here, that this individual who is dead is also serving as a money-minting profit for the person, Edmund Curl, a bookseller who was always constantly trying to get profit out of things. It is believed that the reason why Edmund Curl is mentioned here is because Edmund Curl was such a selfish and money minting person that he has, in a way, published some of the letters of Pope without his consent. So this is what he did. He published anything in any way possible so that he can gain attention. And there is another important insight that Alexander Pope provides in the very next line, which is, he gasps an empty Joseph for a John. Now, who is this Joseph? This is the next question that arises. So the actual answer to this question is, just like Edmund Curlden had the authorized rights to publish Pope's letters, he did not have the authorized rights to even publish the biography of the person who had died, that is John Gay. And as a result of which, what he actually did was, he tried to change the name of the individual. He actually changed the name of John Gay into Joseph Gay so that he can publish his work immediately without being caught. So this is what he did. He even replaced the name of the individual so that he can easily publish the work so that the profit can come up easily. So no regard, no consideration. The only objective was to bring the copy, the hot minting news to the market any way possible. And for that purpose, he was even having the audacity to take up the person's name and put it in some other form also. This is what was the main concern of this particular publisher, and that is what he did, which is the reason why this person, Edmund Curl, has been compared to the Greek mythological figure Proteus. Proteus was considered to be a figure in the Greek mythology who was actually a sea god, and this sea god had the potential of changing his shape constantly into any form, which is what even this person, Edmund Curl, did. Not only did he change the name of the individuals around, like not only did he change the name of John Gay into Joseph Gay so that he can publish his work in the market, but he also in a way changed his own name. So he was also using pseudonym names so that he may not be caught in the market, which is the reason why he has been compared to this Greek mythological figure, which is Proteus, who was known to be changing shapes. He could change himself into a lion, he could change his shape into any specific species that he wanted to. And that is what even this publisher did. He changed the shape of anything. He could change his own name, he could change the name of the writer that he was going to publish, and that was the kind of thing that he did, which is the reason why he's saying in the next line, and the kind of shape that he's taking is the way or the manner in which he would change the names was, he could change the name into a puppy or an ape. That means he could look like a primate one time, and he could even look like an obedient person sometimes. So this is what he did. He could make his image look in whichever way possible. There is no consideration, there is no honesty represented in the trade that these publishers were really doing. There was no honesty, there is no credibility that is to be seen in their work. They are only doing things so that they can attain their profits. This is what in a way exploits the creative talent of the artist, which is what Pope believed was something which was very unethical and which was not something that deserved to be practiced a lot. And Pope wanted to stop this thing, which is the reason why he's constantly criticizing such individuals who are in a way spoiling the reputation of the society in which Pope was writing. Because what is happening is that the good creators are in a way, if their work is getting affected, their literary produce is getting affected, and so is the society also not able to grasp anything inspirational. They are learning the wrong practices, because such individuals from the Grub Street, what are they doing is that they're corrupting the society. They're making the world as stupid as their own empire, which is why Pope is constantly criticizing them. He's comparing them. Here you notice that he's comparing these characters with mythological figures just to state their defects. He's not trying to explain a good property about this individual, this editor. He's trying to explain a bad quality of this individual by comparing him with a mythological figure, Proteus, who again changed his shape. So this is what is represented in the first stanza that we have studied. We'll be heading on with the second stanza now, which I would be explaining line by line. Also, the memoir in which the editor had actually published the biography of John Gay is called Memoirs of the Life and Writings of Mr. Gay. This was a work that was published in 1733, through which the editor Edmund attained a lot of profit without even disclosing out his name, because he also published his name as a pseudonym, and so did he publish the name of the writer also in a pseudonym form as Joseph. So this is what he did. Change the name, change the cover, but the only objective is to get the profit. Change the shape in whatever way you want, but the main objective should be to gain my money. Money, money, money. That's it. So that brings us to the next stanza now. Let's head on with that. In the next stanza, what you'll notice is the sadness of this editor, which is Edmund Curl. Pope continues with the thought process of the editor or the pseudo or the pirated publisher, Edmund Curl, in which you can notice that there is a kind of gloom that is there in his mind, and for this reason he is communicating with the goddess of dullness and asking for a solution. But before that, he is trying to ask for help by communicating with this goddess of dullness, and in a way asking for a kind of solution, just like many other individuals like him have been able to resolve their problems or resolve their complications in life. So what does he say in the first two lines? Let's understand this. To him the goddess, son, thy grief lay down and turn this whole illusion on the town. So now the goddess is communicating with this mortal that is favorite for her. She is the dullness queen, so she is also going to like a person who is as dull and as selfish as her. So she is communicating with her son, which is Edmund Curl, and she says, write down your grief. I can understand that you're feeling sad because you are seeing all these known literary people around you, and you are feeling sad that, or you're feeling threatened of the fact of whether these individuals will be able to accept your works or not. So don't be afraid of this thing. Just lay down your grief, write down the things that are worrying you about, or the things that you feel that you are not being able to put forth in front of the society, and turn the whole illusion on the town, and try to change the perception of the people by also fooling them, just like the way you're fooling people with the way and the manner in which you're producing. So try to create that illusion, try to fool people just with the kind of work that you're publishing. Try to be good in your artwork. And the goddess is now trying to tell him, giving an example to this editor Edmund Curl, and telling him the way and the manner in which he should behave. She's addressing one of her individual that she knows. She refers to that lady as a sage dame. Sage basically represent a person who is well learned, and a dame would be a lady coming from a very good financial background. And this lady that is represented here, so there is a sort of a representation or an example that the goddess is providing to this editor, and she is motivating him to become like this lady who has been able to fool people around her. So what does she say? As the sage dame experienced in her trade, by names of toads, retails, eat battered jade. So now she is trying to talk about this one lady who is so proficient in her trade that she was able to fool everybody around. She was, by boasting about them, by bragging about them, she was in a way able to do a lot. She was able to get profit, and without gaining any loss. She was able to get the money, she was able to do everything. She was able to incur profit for herself without causing any harm to herself. Who is this lady that has been mentioned? Because Pope in the brackets, the very next line, he is mentioned in the brackets the kind of thing that has happened, which is, whence hapless monsieur much complained at Paris of wrongs from Duchess and Lady Mary's. Now this is the lady whom the goddess is actually trying to refer. Who is Lady Maris? It is believed that Lady Maris is actually alluding to a person that Pope knew, who was again coming from a very reputed background, but she definitely did perform very, very wrong tasks. And this lady is Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, who was once a very good friend of Pope, but later on she showed a sort of dislike for Pope. She was not giving him a lot of attention, which is in a way again something that Pope did not like, because he admired her work and he believed that she is probably a good individual, but her behavior in a way made him change his mind, and he didn't really pay much attention to her after this event or situation. This is what is to be seen, and in this it is also noticed that this lady in particularly has even mocked Pope in one of her work, which is called A Pop Upon Pope, where she is constantly ridiculing Pope in her work. And not only has she ridiculed people, but she has also fooled people in terms of money. That is what the retail is actually here addressing to, that she has been able to fool people even on monetary levels in terms of profit, because there is a sort of complaint that an individual, a monsieur, who is this monsieur who's mentioned here? This is again alluding to a particular person who had in reality complained against this lady, and that complaint was in context to some sort of things that some payments that she had to in a way fill up, and she was not able to do that. She was not able to clear up her dues, and because of which she actually did suffer a lot of clashes with individuals around, and there was a lot of complaint that was happening. And the person who is the monsieur who is mentioned here is a French man, and his name, they say, is Mr. Roumond, and that's the person who actually did complain against this lady for not being able to pay her dues, who had actually cheated people around financially and was easily able to fool people around. So this is what is the goddess, though. These lines actually represent the idea of how the goddess is trying to motivate the editor, this pirated editor, to do things just the way this lady is doing. She has been able to fool people with the kind of appearance that she had. She was a very good lady who had even charmed Pope at one point of time, but in reality she was a lady who was able to fool people, gain her profits without causing any harm to herself, which is the reason why the Dunluce Queen is giving an example of her, a good example of this lady that we have just talked about. After addressing this kind of suggestion to Edmund Curll, now the next lines, the following lines, the following lines that we are going to study is actually representing the thought process of Edmund Curll, where he is now communicating with the goddess and trying to say his perspective or his point of view, a way in which a merchant is always revering. Even in Indian culture, you notice that a merchant is always praising God so that his trade really does well. Similarly, over here in the very next line, you notice that Edmund Curll is now saying his perspective, his state of mind, whatever he's feeling. Those aspects have been represented in the next line, following lines, where he is trying to give his perspective about what he thinks about this situation. Is he having some sort of inhibitions because of which he's feeling scared? So he's definitely representing his fears in front of the goddess, and he is also asking for help over here. So that is the reason why he says, "Be thine my stationer, this magic gift." He's talking to the Dunluce Queen and he's saying, be my provider, O goddess of Dunluce, help me, provide me a magic gift, provide me a sorcery, or do something, some sort of sorcery by which I am able to do my profession very well. And how can he perform his profession well? Where he can actually change the roles of individual, where he is easily able to present these pseudo writers as some pioneer writers, because the writers that are mentioned in the very next lines have been mentioned as, provide me that magic gift. With this magic gift, what I really want to do is, Cooke shall be prior and Concanen swift, so shall each hostile name become our own, and we to boast our Garth and Addison. And so what does Edmund Curll really want? He wants that whosoever pseudo writers or these hack writers that he is recruiting to write works, these individuals should be able to present themselves as some pioneer writers. They should easily be able to in a way, steal the style of these pioneer writers. Again, Cooke is a writer and Concanen are writers who are writers with inferior talent. They have not been able to do much. They have always been writing wrong art, in which they are again ridiculing writers, significant writers like Pope, Addison, and Jonathan Swift. So that is what Edmund Curl wants. He wants that all these hack writers are able to perform work or produce work that almost seems to be like the work of some significant writers who are well learned, who know about their art very well, which is the reason why he says, I pray to you, goddess of dullness, that there is some sort of magic that is performed from your end, that I am able to change these inferior writers and make them look like these significant writers. Like Cooke should look like Mathew Prior, and Concanen should look like Jonathan Swift, again a satirist, well-known satirist, who is also belonging to the literary club, Scribblers Club, in which Pope was also a part of. These writers are constantly trying to look like the significant or the pioneer writers. They do not have a talent of their own, which is the reason why they cannot express anything in their own words. And as a result of which, they try to imitate the style of other writers. The imitation is something that they always want to perform, so that they may look like the other writers and so that the readers may also be attracted towards them. They're lacking originality over here, which is what Edmund Curl is also trying to represent by his wish, that the writers that he's publishing have no genuine talent of their own. They are technically people who are just trying to copy others so that their works may sell in the market and people may read them, which is the reason why this change of names has been represented, where Cooke shall be Prior and Concanen Swift. So shall each hostile name become our own. And that is the reason why Edmund Curl says, if this practice is successful, I will be able to make every unknown or every inferior writer a part of the society. I will be very successful in performing the task of making these inferior writers a part of the society. And that is the reason why I want my wish to be granted. And in this way, we will also be able to boast about the writers, our inferior writers, and make them look like the significant writers like Garth and Addison. Again, we will also be able to boast about our inferior writers, just like the society is boasting about the pioneer writers like Addison, Garth, Jonathan Swift, and Mathew Prior. So this is the actual wish of these inferior publishers and these inferior writers, that they want that they should also be appreciated. But the only demerit that is there, that Pope feels is there in these writers, is that they do not deserve the appreciation because they are lacking originality. When you're writing something, you should have originality. You should not imitate somebody, because that imitation is not considered to be a superior art. You need to have a taste of your own, an expression of your own, because that itself is an act of plagiarism. Even today, you notice that whenever you write a research paper, whenever you're doing something very significant, it is always stated that you should not imitate the complete word-to-word expression of an individual, because that is in a way exploiting or violating the creative talent of the person. You need to always acknowledge whatever that person is producing and say that, yes, these sources have been very useful for me because I have read these individuals and these individuals have helped me. Like, for instance, this lecture itself has been a contribution of a lot of material, free source material that I have found from internet, and a lot of references that I have gone through, because of which I have been able to understand the meanings underlying in these lines. That is the reason why Pope was going against and satirizing these individuals in this mock epic. So I hope this was interesting and captivating for all of you, and I hope there are many listeners who are there till the end. I hope you have enjoyed this. Please give me your reviews. Try to subscribe and hit on the bell icon so that I provide latest updates to all of you individuals. I'm trying my level best to make my interpretations even more interesting, and hopefully this journey should be long and something that everybody enjoys. So Until next time, stay tuned to my channel. Don't forget to hit a like button and give me your comments of what you think about the lecture. I shall get back very soon with another lecture where we will understand, analyze, and interpret the important texts that may be part of your English curriculum. This is me, Karishma, signing off for now, and I hope to meet you guys very soon. That's it for me. All right, toodles.